A woman by the name of Beck Dorey Stein recently penned an op-ed in the New York Times. And this op-ed is much better than most of the recent op-eds the New York Times have been running about why we should just try to get along or why liberals should love Brett Kavanaugh. No. Beck Dorey Stein actually has a great op-ed because she used to be a White House stenographer for both Barack Obama and Donald Trump. And she explains why Donald Trump seems to have such an aversion to reality. According to Dorey Stein, Donald Trump did not like for her to write down the things that he said, even though that was her job, because Donald Trump doesn't like to be quoted. He doesn't like his own words to eventually be used against him, which again is ironic coming from a man who tweets his every single thought, but admittedly, those tweets do always end up coming back to haunt him. Dorey Stein points out that previous presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, they loved stenographers, and even the presidents before that. Why? Because it held them accountable, and it allowed them to avoid being misquoted by the press. She was there to capture their every single word, whether it was during an interview or whether it was during a meeting. She was there to write it down, as were the other stenographers. But Trump made sure that they weren't around, that they couldn't record everything that he said. Hope Hicks, at one point, according to Dorey Stein, actually took Donald Trump and Bill O'Reilly when they were in the middle of an interview out of the room with the stenographer so they could go into the Oval Office and have some privacy so that she couldn't know what the two men were talking about. And she says it all boils down to this. The reason Trump doesn't like this is because his biggest adversary as president of the United States is the truth. And that makes perfect sense. And again, this is not anything shocking that most of us didn't know. We all know that Donald Trump lies all the time. We know he has an aversion to the truth. But this puts a different spin on it, right? We didn't necessarily know that Donald Trump doesn't like to be confronted with his own words. We didn't know that Donald Trump and his staff went out of the way to make sure that the stenographers were not in the same room as them so that nothing could be recorded. And we didn't know that Donald Trump was so terrified of reality that he was actually willing to hide from it. That is what this story's about. That's what Beck Dorey Stein's op-ed is about. It's about a man who is not mentally stable enough to serve as the President of the United States. His actions for the past few weeks alone have proved that. With what he did at the G7 summit, what he did at the NATO summit, what he did in Britain, and more importantly, what he did in Helsinki, Finland. Donald Trump is not the man that we need to be running this country. We need anybody else, somebody else. It doesn't matter, gender, race, religion. Anybody else would do a better job than Donald Trump. Because I think at least anybody else, no matter how horrible they are as a Republican politician, they at least can sometimes understand the truth when it slaps them in the face. That's something that Donald Trump is incapable of doing, and that is what makes him quite possibly one of the worst people imaginable to ever serve as President of the United States.